Hello, this is Cho of the Shiny Colors Discord, and welcome to another episode of the Shiny Review. Today we've got 3 cards we need to talk about: a new produced SSR for Kaho, a support SSR for Mono, and a support SR for Mamimi. Keep in mind that Mono as well as Kaho are both limited, so you might want to pull now before they disappear for a good bit. Starting things off, we have Kaho. Wrapping up the P-SSR5 series for Hokago, Kaho arrives to bring about some interesting changes to the formula, while keeping many of the things that have worked or tried to work with previous Hokago cards. Kaho has access to AoE vocal appeals, along with a similar style of interest up, interest down to Choco 5. She has a very unique 2-star passive, along with incredibly beefy stat uncaps for all stats to accommodate for her memory appeal. We'll talk a little more about it later, but Kaho 5's value might genuinely depend on how many copies of Kaho 4 you might have. Having 15% and 25% memory gauge on her initial appeals, Kaho 4's that is, can be pretty important. But that all changes for Kaho 5 once 2 stars is unlocked and you can start building meter. There's a pretty good reason to pull for Kaho 5 if you produce Hokago and want to run multiple types of Hokago teams. Her roles are Attack All, Center, Memory Gauge Boost, and Buffer. I moderately to highly recommend pulling for this Kaho. Kaho's initial skill is a vocal 2.5 appeal that attacks all judges and applies 2 separate buffs. The first is the judge's interest is lowered by 20% for 2 turns, while raised by 25% for 5 turns. This links into a vocal 1.5 appeal that hits all judges. At max, she unlocks a vocal 4.0 appeal that attacks all judges, retains the same judge interest 20% down for 2 turns and interest 25% up for 5 turns, and links into the same vocal 1.5 appeal to all judges. Kaho's 1-star passive is a vocal 50% up that requires Kaho on your team. This has a 30% chance to activate 3 times. Her 2-star passive is a vocal 75% up and memory gauge 25% up that requires the whole lineup of Hokago Climax girls. This means on your Fest selection you must have Kaho, Juri, Choco, Natsuha, and Rinzai actively participating. It won't count if they're only on the team as a support. They have to be on the actual lineup. This has a 30% chance to activate 3 times. She also gains a Vocal Dance Visual plus 40 uncap at 2 stars. Her 3-star uncaps are a Vocal Dance Visual plus 40 and Vocal plus 150. And her 4-star passive is a Vocal Dance Visual 75% up that requires an active Attention Up buff. This has a 30% chance to activate 3 times. Kaho's memory appeal, once maxed out, is a Vocal Dance Visual 1.5 max, scaling based on how high her attention is, which links into a Vocal Max 4.0, again scaling based on how high her attention is. To do a little bit of comparison, we'll look at Kaho 4. Kaho 4 has the slightly higher base damage, but it's single target. But it also builds memory gauge with each attack, the 3.5 building 15%, and the 5.0 building 25%. It also increases your attention by 100% with both the 3.5 and the 5.0 appeal. She only has 2 passives and they have a 40% chance to proc, and her memory appeal is a 1.5 to all stats that links into a 2.0 to all stats. So comparatively, Kaho 5 has a little less damage even though they hit all judges, and instead of going for memory gauge and attention, she focuses on interest up, interest down. So more of damage amp rather than just pure attention buffing. She has 3 passives that are all very strong with a 30% chance to proc, so the odds may be slightly less in your favor with Kaho 5, but there's a lot more to work with. And then as mentioned before, the memory appeal is the same at base, but links into a 4.0 vocal. AoE versus single target is its own debate, though I think generally AoE will be better overall. I find that the memory gauge bonus is greatly appreciated on Kaho 4, especially when you consider Grad can boost this amount in good runs. The attention also makes sense for sure. Kaho 5 having access to possibly more powerful passives, a stronger memory appeal, and a potential damage amp are definitely plus marks. The only reason why I think that Kaho 5's memory appeal could be technically stronger is because you might be building a pure vocal build, so that 4.0 link will probably do more than a 2.0 link to all stats if that all-rounder style isn't exactly fleshed out as good as it could be. But it's definitely up for testing. On to support recommendations. The support setup will focus primarily on vocal, but the nature of her memory appeal will make it tempting to consider rainbow units. Thankfully, many of the better Hokago supports make both of these routes viable at the same time. Cards like the recent limited Rinzai, Juri, and Choco are all fantastic options for Kaho 5, The vocal Gekon Climax Natsuha, being a perm unit, still has her reasons to be around, especially for SP generation, and New Year's Fuyuko is also a great selection. For the alternatives, Illumination Star supports help in the all-stats endeavor, while more traditional vocal supports will help carry the build on more general Vokago teams if you've been using Choco as your center. Cards like the most recent Mono and Hiyori, as well as the vocal Toru, the original Jury, and even the SR Natsuha have places as potential build options. As for the team recommendations, we've got two. The first is Vocal Hokago, focusing on a Choco 5 center. Vocal Hokago has gotten significant upgrades in the last few updates, bringing a second AoE of the same attribute with Kaho, and also a powerful support in the form of Morning Glory Jury. The team still functions relatively the same as it did years ago. You hit really hard, as much as you can on every single judge, and just don't look back. Hope that everything works out. Kaho 5, usually around turn 3 or turn 4, might produce some interesting results with her damage amp alongside Choco 5, so it's definitely worth experimenting if you have the pieces for it. The second team is more of a Rainbow style, focusing on Kaho 5 as your center. This modified version of Rainbow Hokago can make use of Kaho's memory appeal, along with Rinzai 3 for buffing. Rinzai 4 or Rinzai 5 are acceptable here as well, so you could technically build a full Hokago 5 team that works pretty well together. Though Natsuha and Jury are still a little weird because they don't quite work with Choco and Kaho's damage amps, but who knows? Maybe we'll see some improvements to that in the future. On to the grades. Kaho as a center earns anywhere from an S+ to a SS. A vocal 5.5 memory appeal with dance and visual 1.5 along with it is incredibly good. Now granted, a ton of the power of this memory appeal depends on the link, which might not always happen when you need it to. The overall damage will appear to be very similar to Kaho 4, though the heavier influence of vocal at the tail end will make monostat feel more tempting overall, and it might perform better than Kaho 4 over time. Again, we'll just have to see. As a unit, very similar marks. There's a lot of potential for Kaho to make a splash on vocal teams, not just Hokago. The biggest thing holding her back from being the best vocal support for non-Hokago teams is the fact that she won't have a 2-star passive, which can range from appreciated to critical when it comes to card performance. This is why I still think Kiriko 4 and Sakuya 4 are probably better vocal choices for teams that really want to take advantage of buffing, or even just stalling things out, rather than just going for pure damage. Teams want to build memory gauge, but Kaho 5 can only do this for Hokago. With her AoE, meter building, and damage amp, she's a force to be reckoned with. Next we have our limited support, Mono. Mono's latest limited support is designed similarly to Hiyori's from not long ago. The fact that she retains the unit mastery stamina that Hiyori also had means that eventually Illumination Stars will never worry about stamina regardless of team, which makes their lineup prime for use on almost any team once you assemble the necessary pieces. We'll have to be on the lookout for that limited Meguru support. Maybe by anniversary, we'll have to see. She has 7 support skills: Idol's Bond, Promise Recovery, and Rest Boost, alongside 4 unique support skills: Visual Mastery Vocal and Visual Mastery Visual, both reaching +10 at level 65, Unit Mastery SP capping out at +6 at level 70, and Unit Mastery Stamina unlocked at level 75. She has a scaling support appeal, though it scales in a non-traditional way. It stays as a visual 3.0 regardless of level, but once it reaches level 60, it gains a buff. A vocal visual 5% up for 3 turns, which scales by 5% every 5 levels, meaning by level 80, it becomes a vocal visual 25% up for 3 turns. Her TFD idea is visual, and her insight token for grad is vocal. Mono's 1-star passive is a visual 40% up and vocal 20% up that only requires Mono on your team. This has a 10% chance to activate 3 times. Her 2-star passive is a visual 60% up and vocal 30% up that requires the turn count to be 3 or later. This has a 10% chance to activate 3 times. Her 3-star uncap is a +70 to vocal and visual, and her 4-star appeal is a visual 3.0 followed by a vocal 1.5 appeal that applies a vocal visual 30% buff for 3 turns. Mono's event passive is a visual 30% up and vocal 10% up that only requires Mono on your team and has a 20% chance to activate twice. Much like how I felt about Hiyori is how I feel about Mono, truth be told, so her grades are very similar, A- to potentially SS. She's a powerful card when paired with other Illumination Stars, and certainly complements limited Hiyori 2 perfectly. Just be careful of pulling for her if you aren't intending on operating with a full Illumination Star setup, or don't use Illumination Stars in Fest. As such, the recommendation for pulling ranges from low to high. If you're not really much of an Illumination Stars or Rainbow style producer, Mono doesn't really do a whole lot for you. But if you do like either building a Rainbow style team or producing Illumination Stars, Mono might be a card you're looking for. Lastly, we have Mamimi. Now I swear, it means in perfect condition. That's what her title means. Please believe me. Event Mamimi is perfectly fine. She's not necessarily anything special as a support. She actually has a pretty strong 4-star appeal once you get the setup going for it. You mostly just run into the issue of getting to that point first. She's kind of a filler unit overall. Her support skills are Idol's Bond, Promise Recovery, Rest Boost, and Trouble Guard, and her unique support skill is Visual Mastery Visual, reaching +5 at level 65. Her TFD and Insight token are both visual. Mamimi's 1-star passive is a visual 12% up that requires you to be in the visual position. This has a 30% chance to activate once. Her 2-star passive is a visual 20% up that requires the turn count to be 3 or earlier. This has a 30% chance to activate once. Her 3-star uncap is a +50 to visual, and her 4-star appeal is a visual 1.0 to 5.0, scaling based on how low your attention is. Her event passive is a visual 8% up that requires Mamimi on your team, and it has a 30% chance to activate twice. Mamimi earns a C. She's okay overall. There's nothing that really stands out with Mamimi other than her appeal. She's built like almost every event SR currently being released. The 4-star appeal, as we've highlighted several times, is very much appreciated, though there's no way to actually get there by her own means. This card doesn't increase or lower your attention at all, ideally lowering it, so you'd have to pair it up with other Antika cards in order to get the most value out of it. As such, it might be a little too hard to use for most modes outside of Fest, which is definitely a hamper for most players. The commu is super fun at the very least if you're a big fan of Mamimi and Kogane interactions. You might as well farm for Mamimi while she's here. And that's gonna do it for the video today. Thank you so much as always for watching. If you like the video, make sure to, well, like it, so that way people will get it recommended more often, and make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, if you want to see more Shiny Colors content. We've got more videos planned for this month, so please look forward to a couple different things going forward. Till next time, I've been Cho, thanks for watching, and have a wonderful rest of your day.